Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul? Happy Thursday.
Doing well, but I keep searching and searching for a super good story, and maybe you have one. But we'll keep looking.
Good news, bad news.
Today there's a bunch of junk out there going on because we haven't reformed the country into believing in freedom once again. They just don't believe in the principle, nor they understand that everything is the government. Go take care of it. Interventionism, fix it up, and no self-reliance. But that's an old story. But there's a spark out there. There's a lot of people there that would like to see the reversal. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But just before the program started, I caught a little article, a little announcement on Hedge, which was annoying, annoying because of the report. It has to do with a major cycling event coming up, and the American had a team in there, and the short story was a 19-year-old American young fella that was really, really good got kicked off the team. He texted something negative about Trump, so they kicked him off the team. He mentioned that. I mean, this could. Can you imagine what that can undo his life? You know, but they kick it off his team because he texted something.
Yeah, he tweeted a pro-Trump tweet.
Yeah, he was just pro-Trump.
So what? You like to say something nice about Trump? It's amazing.
Well, anyway, the vultures are still out there.
Well, it's amazing, you know, and this is, if it's not free speech, it's on his own Twitter account. He didn't hijack the account of the cycling race and say, here, it's for pro-Trump. It's his own personal account. You know, I think we've seen a lot of this. We saw it with the Covenant Catholic. We're seeing it now with this young man who's up for murder in the Kenosha unrest. They're suing for libel. They're suing for defamation. And, you know, the Covington Catholic kid got a bunch of money. Rittenhouse was called a white supremacist by Biden, who was not in office, and he's suing for that. And there's no, even the Southern Poverty Law Center said there's no evidence this guy's a white supremacist. So maybe this will get him to wake up.
Well, there's a positive spin on that. Maybe a spin on this. Maybe there is sort of life in the court system, and you never know, because sometimes when they appoint classical conservative individuals, they're not classical constitutionalists.
Yeah.
But anyway, I do think that with this current administration, things have improved compared to what it could have been. So that's good. But and maybe if they lose a few more cases, they'll stop and think about this. So we had some other things that we wanted to go on, and that let's see.
Well, Thanksgiving's on the horizon here. You know, we're thinking about Thanksgiving.
There's some controversy about exactly what went on the first Thanksgiving, but that's not our point. Because I always liked Thanksgiving because I thought it was a time that you can get together with family and be thankful for what we have. But now, what are they doing? They're talking about canceling it or postponing it or not allowing. Oh, I guess too many people. You mean your friends and neighbors and family members would get together? I wonder if I could use my family room on Thanksgiving if these rules go through. Probably not.
It's amazing, you know, the CDC is getting more and more involved in the innermost parts of our lives. They're not dealing with, with diseases anymore. They're dealing with behaviors. Let's look at the first clip because this came out yesterday. We both noticed it. Thought, what? CDC recommends a virtual Thanksgiving to lessen the risk of COVID-19 spreading. I guess we have a virtual turkey and we have virtual family members. But look at this next one, Dr. Paul. This is on the CDC's own website. They're getting involved with telling us how to celebrate our holidays. You like Halloween? Well, here's how you got to do it. You like Dia de los Muertos? Here's how you do it. Thanksgiving? Here's how you do it. Look at some of their things. They already ruined Halloween. Let's look at the next one. They already ruined Halloween by telling you what you can't do. High-risk activities for Halloween. You cannot participate in traditional trick-or-treating where treats are handed to children. You cannot even hold the trunk-or-treat where the kids go around the trunks of cars and get candy. You can't have costume parties. You can't go on hay rides or tractor rides with people who are not in your household. Don't you dare use alcohol. Don't go to any rural fall festivals that's not in your community. They've already ruined Halloween. Now they want to ruin Thanksgiving. But here they have some helpful suggestions, Dr. Paul. And let's look at the next one before I turn it back over to you, because I hope the Paul family, which is known for having some pretty big Thanksgiving celebrations, I hope you take good notice of this. Have a small dinner with only people who live in your household. That'd be kind of a small one. Have a virtual dinner and share recipes with friends and families. Watch sporting events and movies from home. Shop online rather than in person. Give your money to Jeff Bezos, not the mom and pop shop down the street.
You know, one thing about this that annoyed me the most was the comments by the people who were involved. Some weren't outraged. So, well, they used the term. They said, we can accept this. We'll have to do it to be safe. You know, we're going to be safe from the virus, and we're going to be safe because the government's going to take care of it. They never talk about how can you be safe by sacrificing your liberty. So they're not outraged at all by this. A lot of people. There are some that are.
Yeah.
But this whole thing is, and it was, to me, a point that I always try to make is you can't get your liberty if you're willing to sacrifice it because you want to be safe and secure. And they use these very words. Well, they're not. They're doing it for our benefit. And all you have to do is have a politician or a bureaucrat fib a little and demagogue a little bit.
Yeah.
That's always what they're doing. When do they ever say, well, we're going to introduce this program, but we know it doesn't work. They've tried it for 1,000 years for governments to take over this. But we're going to do it anyway because we think we can do a better job, and we're going to make you safe and secure, and we will take care of you because we are so advanced in society now that we know how to do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can't help but think that this is not a massive gaslighting operation, because what they're trying to convey here through these helpful guidelines, because we're too stupid to know how to, do Thanksgiving and be safe, is the idea that virtual life is not just as good as real life, but it's actually better than real life. It's better to have a virtual life, to not have contact with people, to not visit with people, to not get out and go to stores and buy your things there. Stay home in front of your TV and live your life online. And doesn't that make you wonder why, if that's not why, we have such a massive spike in mental illness? They're literally trying to make people become mentally ill by telling them to stay home. But they do say you can open a window if you're at home.
There was an article today or yesterday by CNN conditioning us, and they'll tell us what to do. It's sort of like, get a life, you guys that are always complaining, because they said you're not going back to normal. But we heard that very early on in the so-called epidemic. We're never going to go back to normal. But what they never talk about is what was normal, where was it, and what does that mean? And in their minds, it might be completely different, because there were some things in the past that were pretty good, and some things that were very, very bad. And but they're saying that their idea of what our society and our social activities are, we're never going to get to do that. And you can't just think automatically you have a right to get 100 people together for a Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, that's just gone forever. But when you think of it, what about the millions and millions of people that lived under total tyranny?
Yeah.
Did the German people and even the Russian people say, "Oh, this is too much revolution. Let's go back to normal"?
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing just going back doesn't make anything. I've never liked the term, "Let's go back to such and such." Even when I argue the case for sound money, people will say, "Oh, you want to go back to the 19th century or so and have this monetary system?" I said, not necessarily. I think we can, improve on things, but there are some principles that you can deal with, and that's why it has to be sorted out. And what is normal, what you really believe in. But they don't start with the principles of tyranny over the individual. They just start with how are we going to manage things, how are we going to get power, and how are we going to get wealth by deceiving the people and promising them that we'll give them safety and prosperity.
And I think this article that we're talking about, we can even put up the headline, the next clip. But I think this is one of the most chilling, one of the most evil, one of the most demonic things that I have read in years. There is no getting back to normal, experts say. The sooner we accept that, the better. CNN. And it's chilling. I'm going to read 2 sentences out of it, and this is really amazing. Perhaps it's nostalgia for the world of January, a place where daily life more closely resembled our past decades. Perhaps it's a bid to show control, to revert to a time when change was not so universally imposed upon us. Listen to this. But January is long gone, and it's not coming back. And psychologists will tell you that it's only bad for you if you can't come to terms with it. So if somehow you long for the time when some mayor or some bureaucrat wasn't screaming that you'll go to jail if you don't have a face mask, then actually you have a psychological disorder that you need to deal with.
And the principle there is we want you to submit to the standards that we set and fit in. Don't rock the boat. And we've already been subject to people who thought we rocked the boat and that you had to get punished. But that's essentially what goes on. You know, you tweet something or say something, you're rocking the boat, and you can't do that. But maybe you had more license to do that a few years ago. But certainly they don't, you know, they certainly wouldn't want to go back to the understanding of the First Amendment written many years ago. Nobody ever expects to do that, or their original intent of what they tried to do with our Constitution. They're not talking about that. They're talking about don't rock the boat. We're in charge, and we're gaining ground, and you can't gain. In a way, they're saying you can't regain your liberty. So just shut up and go to work and obey.
And these people aren't backing off. They are not about to back off. In fact, they're ratcheting it up. And I refer to this, and you referred to it recently too. But really, there is a strong hint of the old Soviet Union. If you don't accept this new system that's been imposed on you after our revolution, no, you have a mental illness. You need to go to a psychiatric prison. Here's another quote from the article: "Permanently severing ties with January is not necessarily a bad thing, psychologists say. The danger comes from hankering for normalcy again." That's the danger. You're going to have a psychological problem if you want to go back to the January, which is just a few months ago.
Sometimes when we have these changes, sudden changes, they do go back for the wrong things. You know, if they've been used to having the IRS and the Federal Reserve, they're not talking about that. Oh no, we don't want the people there that want to reject that. They want that. They want their standards. They want to be in charge. There's no doubt about it.
One final quote there, and then we're going to go on to our next talk about vaccines. But this is a final quote that's worth listening. "Those who refuse to wear masks may be guilty of normalcy bias," is what the article said. So you actually, I guess that's a form of racism or something, but you have a normalcy bias if you don't put that mask on. But anyway, we want to talk about how are these wonderful trials going of the new vaccine that they're going to be rushing through. I hear there's some good news about it.
Yes, good news. I don't know. Maybe reality. They want reality on their terms, but there are reports, and you know what it does. It brings up memories of my first week in Congress, which I've told people about because it had an impact, and it was a real challenge for me to walk in there the first day and everybody voting for a vaccine for political reasons, and Ford was in political trouble. He had to stop the disease and vote for umpteen millions of dollars. Everybody has to get a vaccination. And as I mentioned so often, is two people voted against it, myself and another doctor. You know, we voted against it, you know, for not just medical reasons, because we question that, but also for the political reasons. Why are we in the business of passing out these vaccinations? Because it could be dangerous. Turned out to be dangerous. The story goes, back in '76, more people died from the vaccine than they did from the virus. And here we are. This is just early in the stages. This is, you know, in the what they call the phase 3. And all of a sudden, the reports are coming up. And one of the biggest complaints, they had various complaints, was severe migraine headaches. Ooh. And it was astounding that some of them said, well, I signed the paper, and that's a price that we have to pay. I said, no, it isn't. It isn't. There's no evidence that we really need it. There's no evidence that you'll ever get the vaccine to work.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, work on it, but don't do it through a political system and through mandates and trying to get everybody to do it and make that our passport. If you don't have it, you can't go anywhere. You can't get a job. You can't get on an airplane. That's what coming. This is that whole thing about the vaccines is a big time, and they're of course downplaying this. Only a few people do it. But do they say that when they're counting up deaths? That really the death count is not as big as they say.
Yeah.
They say, oh, there was 1 or 2, and they also had pneumonia, that sort of thing. But this is a real shame of what's going in here and trying to justify it. And I think even Gates was quoted, and he tried to belittle it. I think Gates and Fauci should be tested with it before anybody else.
Yeah, but you mentioned something before the show that struck me. You know, the idea that you could have a serious multi-day migraine. You said that's different than just a...
No, migraines are well known, and they usually last a good while, and they're usually physiologic and sometimes stress-related and different things, sometimes not fully understood. But when you get a headache like this, I think it is a chemical, a foreign body has come in, and it isn't just like a little stress headache. Mm-hmm. And I think it means that there could be a lot of trouble. That vaccine in '76 actually caused Guillain-Barré syndrome, mm-hmm. where you literally become paralyzed. Fortunately, most people to recover, but it was very, very serious. So this is the same way here. This is early right now. You know, these are the early people who tested, and but it was on the 3rd dose, and they're starting to report this. There's a lot of people that signed that paper. They're not even going to report it. And you say, well, it's probably not that bad. They're going to say, well, we got away with it, but that's not right. It's not normal and natural, especially since the evidence is growing that there are some very good things that happen in nature, how we develop our immunities. It's not like, well, if you don't have that vaccine, you've committed murder. Yeah. And they literally say that. If you don't do that, you've killed those people, and that is over the top.
Yeah, but once again, they're not letting up. And this is an article I noticed. This is a new article from the New England Journal of Medicine. These people are concerned. Let's put up that first clip. You'll tell by the title what it's all about. Ensuring uptake of vaccines against SARS-CoV-2. And they complain now in this article, only 49% of Americans plan to get vaccinated. What are we going to do about this? This is a problem. One option for increasing vaccine uptake is to require it. They talk about consideration for when a mandate might become appropriate. This is interesting, Dr. Paul, considering what you just said. Our approach is guided by lessons from U.S. experiences with vaccines for the 1976 swine flu. Oh, that was a good one. H1N1, influenza, smallpox, and human papillomavirus. Go to the next one, though. This is a little bit later in the study. This is a little bit chilling. 6 trigger criteria for state COVID-19 vaccination mandates. And this is a roadmap toward forced vaccination. This is a roadmap toward having your liberty taken away from you.
Yes, and the disturbing thing is how people say, well, I want to be safe.
Yeah.
I want to be safe, and I don't want to rock the boat. And they get intimidated, and they use the whole thing about fear and hysteria, and people go along, and which is such a shame because, you know, what we have done is we have literally canceled the whole notion that living in a free society means that you assume some responsibilities for yourself. And like it was explained by some of my colleagues in Washington, yes, Ron, that's true. But the people are too stupid and too lazy, and they won't do it, so they need us to tell them what to do. So this is what they're doing. They won't do it. But the whole thing is you know, I think the science should be challenged. You know, this whole idea that their science is the final word is a bunch of baloney.
And that's why it's so important, Dr. Scott Atlas and people like him. And there are many, many, many like him who are saying, okay, let's take another look at this now that we have more data. And I think that's important. So let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't know, you ready to move on to greener pastures here? And this is something that really is trending. People are talking about a lot. The co-founder of the Federalist went on Tucker Carlson last night. And it's a pretty fascinating thing. He basically is claiming that CIA Director Haspel is personally standing in the way of declassifying more of the Russiagate material to let us know exactly what happened, what was it all about. And he speculated on Tucker's show. This is really interesting, and this says a lot, unfortunately, about Trump as well. She was the station chief, the CIA station chief in London. Well, they were running around collecting this dossier about Trump, which we know now was completely bogus. She was involved there. She had to have been involved in knowing about what was going on. She worked for John Brennan, who cooked up the whole Russiagate thing himself at the time, and now here she's in a position to block us from knowing what happened.
There is no easy answer, doing our very best to sort it out and have an absolutely correct explanation on why is she there running the CIA.
Yeah.
I mean, very powerful. And they are notorious. They've been doing the wrong thing ever since the Second World War ended, and they created this thing. And yet she's there, and she had good credentials. She was a strong believer in torture, and actually participated in that. But that didn't do anything. But here we have an administration he's threatened. The administration is threatened by people like this. So it's a real shame. But I remember a friend, very conservative, a long time ago, and he had it right. I was just sort of feeling my way along in the early 60s and 70s, and he said, well, in a republic, you cannot have a CIA. I mean, they were too much in conflict. I mean, the CIA is secret government. They can cover anything and everything. They're always in denial. You know, if they get caught at something, they get dumped, you know, and they're denied, and they never get caught, you know. So that is a real bad thing that's happening. But the principle is what has to be challenged. Why should we have people, hundreds if not thousands of people, participating in part of the surveillance state? And I don't know, I've read too many books now. I better quit reading about conspiracy books about how often our governments have used assassinations, domestically and international. Oh, that can't be possible. I used to say that can't be possible. They're not that way, you know, but boy, there are some people who have done some, you know, investigation into details to bring up the explanation that yes, our government does get involved, and that is if that isn't challenged, if we don't challenge the CIA and not believe that they're going to take care of us, then we're going to be in a big contest, and we're already in a contest with secret government.
Yeah, and you know, we heard of this ongoing Assange trial, which we should try to cover next week. Horrible, horrible stuff. But we learned there that the CIA was trying to figure out how to assassinate Assange himself. So we know that they're still involved in this. But yeah, unfortunately, this is Trump. He's got Pompeo, he's got Haspel, he's got Elliott Abrams. He surrounds himself with the worst kinds of people. Then he scratches his head and says, "Gosh, I wonder why things aren't going very well for me in policy." But I'm gonna close out unless you've got some more to say about Haspel. I'm getting really depressed over our show today, so I'm going to close out with not only good news, Dr. Paul, but unbelievably terrific news. And let's put up this first clip and this last clip, second to last clip, and that'll tell you why I am so unbelievably excited. No, before that, please.
Shut up, man.
The End of Unearned Opulence by Ron Paul, a new mini book, just came out, brand new book. It's unbelievable. It talks about, it's literally ripped from the headlines, everything we're talking about, the fake prosperity, the overreaction to the coronavirus, what it all means for the future. This, Dr. Paul, I think is one of your finest of these mini books. I love this quote: "Lying, cheating, stealing, and killing by governments are now too often accepted as acts of patriotism rather than as deadly sins." We're offering this book to our supporters who help us keep the show going, who help us keep the Ron Paul Institute going, keep the hope for liberty alive, the fight for liberty alive. We're going to give a copy of this book to every person who makes a contribution of $50 or more to the Ron Paul Institute. And if you make a contribution of $100 or more, sorry, Dr. Paul, but he's agreed to hand sign these books to you, so you have a personalized hand signed copy. Let's look at that final one. This tells you how you can make your donation and get your book. Go to the Ron Paul Institute website, ronpaulinstitute.org. The link is in the description. You see that little thing that says support there on the top margin? Just click on that and you can pay online. You can send a check. You can, and this is a limited time offer, Dr. Paul. We're going to go through the month of October offering this book to people. But don't wait, because We have also a limited supply. You are going to want to get this book and read this book. It's a terrific book, and we're grateful to you, Dr. Paul, for writing it.
Very good. Thank you.
I read it a few times, and I love it.
Very good. And I want to thank our viewers for being so supportive and also coming and visiting with us every day. And we do pay a lot of attention, especially to the comments, and the live audience has been growing by leaps and bounds. So that is very good. So there's a lot of interest, and though we report everything, that means there's a lot of negative stuff out there, a lot of reasons why we should be motivated, but also the things where we find out that people are waking up. And I know some people say, "Oh, you're stretching it too much. That's too much hope." Well, I'll tell you what doesn't have hope is if you just give up and forget about it. That's why, as I campaigned over the years, especially during the presidential campaign, I tried to tell people that, yeah, it can be. It can be depressing if you look at this and you're truthful about it. But it's also a revelation that if you know what's wrong, then what you offer might make sense. And that's the difference if you just complain about it or just say something, we want this, this, and this. No, you have to know, say, with foreign policy, why do we spend so much money overseas and help the military industrial complex? Well, it's because we have an interventionist foreign policy. And we can come up with those answers, and they're I think, very positive because they're supporting the principles of liberty, and that is our goal, and this is what we want to do. We want to promote the cause of liberty, and we want to make sure that peace and prosperity will be our goal, and we thank you very much for being with us on a continuous basis. Come back soon.